Did you know that the beginning of a story is sometimes the hardest part of a book or a story for a writer to nab? Today I'm going to share with you my 7 best tips to write a really strong beginning so that the rest of your book can flow more easily. Hello everyone, and welcome to Pen to Paper. I'm Leah Lindeman, author of the Canadian Reminiscence series. And today we're going to be talking about how to craft a really strong beginning for your book, a novella, short story, so that your reader is drawn in immediately and that the rest of your story can flow in a way that is really solidified by a strong beginning. So the first tip I'm going to share with you today is number 1, first liners. A lot of people think, and this is kind of a misjudgment, that first lines need to be absolutely epic for the rest of the book to follow. And that is not always the case. I'm going to share 2 first lines that is the case, and the books are amazing. And another 2 first lines where they're not really stellar, they're not twinkly and eye-catching, but the rest of the beginning was strong enough that it didn't have to be stellar. It didn't have to be that amazing one line that everyone remembers. So I'm going to share one line that is pretty popular amongst Stephen King fans, horror community, fantasy community, and that is, "The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed." That is the first line of The Gunslinger by Stephen King. That is a modern novel that the rest of the book, although the line is great, the rest of the book is actually, I've heard different things. Some people loved it. Some people didn't really care for it. Although that line was strong, I felt like the rest of the beginning drew me in, and I wanted to know more about what was happening. Who's this man in black? Who's the gunslinger? Why are they chasing each other across the desert? So it definitely brings the reader in because it's already putting out so many questions that we want answered. Another first line that a lot of classic lovers really know is Pride and Prejudice, and I'm going to read it to you. I could probably paraphrase it, but I want to make sure that you're getting the full justice of the first line. Oh goodness, this is the introduction. We don't want that. We want chapter 1. All right, listen up. "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." And there you have it. The stage is set. We get to find out that there are these sisters and they all want to marry a man of good fortune. And then Mr. Darcy comes into town, and then the inciting happens where they meet and they are so opposite to one another. That really just gets the story going. So there you have another example of a stellar line with a very strong beginning, and the rest of the story can follow. Now I'm going to give you 2 first liners from books that are really high quality, that I love tremendously, but they're really nothing special. I will show you the modern one first, and that is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. I just found out about this book last year, and I read it for my December reads, and it was quite amazing. It's an amazing book. So much layering, so much detail. I gave it 5 stars. But listen to the first sentence. It's really nothing that special. "After 15 years of handling the Trementis house charters, Danaeus Trementis knew that a deal which looked too good to be true probably was." Sure, it gives us questions, but it's not really a first line that stuck with me, that I remembered very well, but the rest of the book and even the beginning was very strong. Now let's take a look at my favorite classic. You guys are going to get a kick out of this. Jane Austen, Persuasion. I love Persuasion. It's my favorite Jane Austen novel. But listen to the first sentence of chapter 1. It's long. Sir Walter Elliot of Kellynch Hall in Somersetshire was a man who, for his own amusement, never took up any book but the baronetage. There he found occupation for an idle hour and consolation in a distressed one. There his faculties were roused into admiration and respect by contemplating the limited remnant of the earliest patents. There, any unwelcome sensations arising from domestic affairs changed naturally into pity and contempt, as he turned over the almost endless creations of the last century. And there, if every other leaf were powerless, he could read his own history with an interest which never failed. That's very long. Okay, I thought the whole other part was part of that. There's a lot of semicolons that she uses to tell us about Sir Walter Elliot. Interestingly enough, it starts off with Sir Walter Elliot, not the protagonist, which is actually going against one of my tips for today. But I just wanted to show you, a lot of writers stress over the importance of the first line. It has to be amazing. People need to remember it for them to actually love my book. Not true. As you can see, I love these two books. I don't remember the first lines, but the story and the beginning gripped me, that it carried me through to the end, and I was able to love them with my whole heart. So do not stress about your first line. Pick a first line, go with it. You can always edit it in the end. Number 2, show, don't tell. This is obviously you want to show and don't tell in most of your writing of your book. There may be some incidents when telling is necessary or acceptable, but in the beginning, you don't want the writer to just tell you everything, because then where is the intrigue? We're not drawing you in with a story. You know, we're storytellers. We have to give you a little bit, and then you come a little breadcrumb, and then you come pick it up, and then another breadcrumb, and you come pick it up until you're following that line of breadcrumbs to the finished result, the product. That is what we're aiming to do. If we just give you all the breadcrumbs, you're not going to come follow us to the end. So don't tell your reader. Billy's best friend Bob came over every day. They were best friends because da-da-da-da-da. Don't tell me that they're best friends. Show why they're best friends. Does Bob make Billy laugh? I know this is super simple and kind of stupid, but you get my drift. That I don't want to tell the reader how things are. I want to show them through dialogue, through action, through the setting, how things are. And therefore, they're more willing to follow the rest of the breadcrumbs down the way to get to the meatier and juicier parts. Tip number 3, do not info dump. What do I mean by that? This is especially fantasy writers, even historical fiction writers, science fiction writers tend to have this as their downfall. They'll just want to tell you everything about the world. Do all the world building in the beginning and they'll love you. No, that's not true. Again, there is an advantage to giving nuggets of information at a time, and it needs to be carefully woven in so that we are not giving them the full picture. So let's say you're a fantasy writer and you have the whole world. Yes, you're going to want to give a sense of the world, but you can open up more of that world as the story progresses. And actually, The Mask of Mirrors did an amazing job doing this. It gives you enough of the world, enough of a snapshot of the world to help you understand where Ren, the main character, the protagonist, where she's coming from and what she is planning to do. She's the one trying to pull off the con in the book. But then as the story develops, the world opens up. That's when you get to see the different political houses, how they're vying for power, and then the world opens up even more on a different level when you have this dream world versus reality. This is amazing world building. It doesn't just give it to all to me at the beginning. That would be info dumping. That would be way too much for me. I don't have the brain space or capacity, most of us don't, to just take it all at once. So do your reader a favor and give it to them in bite-sized pieces, with showing, not telling, in the appropriate areas that are going to help your story build and help them follow along. Tip number 4 is that if you looked at the video, I don't know if you've seen the video that I gave on story structure, and I'll put that up in the card above. But in story structure, you have the regular 5-act structure. You have the setup, which we've already talked about. Then you have an inciting incident, which leads to your rising tension, which leads to your climax, and which leads to your resolution. Your inciting incident is the problem or the thing that's going to set your character off in the direction that they need to go, in the problem that they need to solve for the rest of the novel. Your inciting incident should either be in the first chapter, and it probably shouldn't go past chapter 3. Unless your chapters are very short, maybe it can go in chapter 4, but I wouldn't definitely go past chapter 3 or past 20% of your book. Why? Because then readers are going to get frustrated with you. Okay, so I see this character, cool world, what's the problem? We don't want to read about someone's life and that's it. La-di-da-di-da. They wake up, they go see their friends. This is what they do for a job. That's it. I mean, that's boring. We want to be entertained. And the way to do that is to have that inciting incident leading to your rising tension somewhere between chapters 1 and 3. Again, if they're short, maybe a little bit past chapter 3. And even if you don't have your incident, your inciting incident right away, maybe it's at chapter 3, give enough problems, mini problems to your character that are going to lead them to that inciting incident in chapter 3. Take a look at, now I can't remember what chapter this is on, but if you take a look at the Hunger Games, you have Katniss Everdeen, she wakes up and she goes through her day, but it's not a normal day. It's not like, oh, everything in their life is fine, so this is what our character looks like. It's very clear from the beginning that she is living in an impoverished district, that they are persecuted, they do not have freedoms, and so that is already giving you a little taste for what the inciting incident is to come. I can't remember what chapter it's on. Obviously, it comes at a great time because it leads you to that point, and then you go on from there. That's right. Okay. So, tip number 5. You are going to start your book with your protagonist and the now. So, as I said in Persuasion, it's really interesting that she starts talking about Sir Walter Elliot. He's not the protagonist. I can't remember how that happens because I actually haven't read that book for a long time. All I know is that I'm in love with it. I should read it again. But the point is, if you don't start with your protagonist, your main character, or now, then it's probably supposed to be a prologue. Take in my second book, Wisps of Gold. It starts off with a letter from the father to the daughter. The father is not my main protagonist. It's just a short letter. So that is my prologue. And my chapter 1 actually starts with the daughter Rose and her little escape into town, which leads to the inciting incident where she finds her father's body. That is how it's supposed to be done, starting with your protagonist. Because unless you have a book like Six of Crows, where it's a gang, right? And you're going to have chapters that have the perspective of the different members of the gang, and they all have equal representation, then that's different. You can do that. And then the Six of Crows and the Crooked Kingdom, that definitely gives you that vibe that it's a bigger than one person book. Leigh Bardugo does an excellent job with that. So that would be the exception to the rule. Tip number 6, I need to care about your character. If I don't care about your character, I don't care about the rest of the book. Simple as that. Now, what are 2 ways that you can make someone care about your character? Number 1, it's a good character, and there's something bad happening to that character, but in such a way that you feel connected to that character. Number 2, that character has some major flaws, some weaknesses, but there's some sort of humanity to them that makes you want to care for that character. Now, I know that's a broad spectrum. It really is. But make sure that your character is relatable. Now, if your character is a good character, but they're like a way goody two-shoes character and they do everything perfect, that is not relatable. None of us are like that. And instead, it makes them a smug and arrogant character that we probably don't want to read about. Unless you show very clearly that somehow that's going to change, that there's something that's going to happen to them. That's the inciting incident, so you might want to put that at the start. That's going to change their character forever and make them more humble. That could be it too. Whatever you decide how your character is going to be, make sure that the reader cares about them. And tip number 7, just get it done. Don't obsess over the first chapter so that you don't even get past the first chapter. Because you know what? You can go back and rewrite it again. Book number 1 for me, Redeemed from the Ashes. I wrote the book. I actually wrote the first 3 chapters. Then I got married. Then I had my first child. And then I finished the book after that. I had my husband read it. He's a great beta reader. He's not a writer, far from it, but he has a good sense of what makes a really good story, a strong story. And he said, I love it, but the beginning needs a lot of work. And guess what I had to do? Yep, I had to go back to my beginning. I had to rewrite it. I had to do a bunch of edits, but it made it stronger in the end. So it's okay, especially if you're a first-time writer. You're kind of testing out the waters. You're not too sure how this is all going to pan out. And let's face it, you don't have a lot of experience. You're probably not writing that great of a beginning. That's okay. Just write it. You can always come back to it. I hope that these tips have been a huge help to you. If you are as a reader or writer, how does a beginning hook you? What things are necessary for you to continue on into the book? And what things turn you off? I would love to hear your comments down below. And I will see you next week again on Wednesday for Author 2.